Alright, so you think you want to be an indie game developer. But honestly, is that really what you want to do, or do you just want to play games? Because there's a big difference. As an indie game developer, you wear a bunch of hats. You have to have an artistic side and come up with assets. You have to have a logical side, so you can code. You have to do marketing. You have to do design, story. There's so many hats that you wear, and it's a big job. And while you hear about success stories like Stardew Valley and Minecraft that were made by one person and they instantly became millionaires, the part that you're not really focusing on is like Eric Barone, and I might be pronouncing his last name incorrectly, and if I am, I'm sorry, spent 4 years and spent hours a day for those 4 years, almost every day, working on that game. So when you hear about that, you hear, oh, one guy made this game and became an instant millionaire. What you're not hearing is one guy devoted 4 years of his entire life to creating that game and making that success. It used to be that you could just throw a game up on Steam and we'd be guaranteed sales and sell 1,000 copies. But that's not the way it is today. Every day on Steam, between 20 and 40 games launch. So think about yesterday. What game can you name that launched yesterday? What game can you name that launched today? Probably none. Because nowadays these games kind of get lost because there's so much stuff going on. So if you really think you want to be an indie game developer, follow this series. I'm going to walk you through a whole bunch of stuff, some different mechanics and things that you can put in your 2D game. And you'll see how many hats you have to wear through the entire process, and then you can kind of decide if it's really for you. Alright, some pre-production stuff. We're going to be using, I'm going to be using the Unity game engine, and probably like 2021.3.30, and that just came out August of 2023, so it's only a few months old for that version. I really like the 2019 version because it doesn't take, like, every time you change a script, you don't have to wait for everything to reload and stuff forever. You're not going to spend any money on assets. You're going to have to look up for all free assets. And as we go through the process, we're going to talk about marketing. You have to market early in today's game market. Valheim was on Steam for 2 years before it actually went live because they spent that 2 years marketing and pushing the game. Alright, and lastly, when you're going through tutorials, you need to take notes, write things down, and as they're coding and stuff, and there's things that you don't understand or you're not 100% sure of, make sure you go to the Unity documentation site and look that stuff up. Remember, you're trying to understand what they're doing. If you don't have an understanding, the best you're going to be able to do is just duplicate what they did. And you'll be making the exact same game, but you won't be able to make any changes to the game or any variations of the game. So when we write code, we're going to put a lot of comments in there and stuff so that we know what things do. Alright, before you actually touch a game engine, you need to come up with a color scheme. Our games are going to have menu screens and different things, so we need to come up with our color scheme, and the color scheme needs to match. The last thing you probably want to do is just start picking random colors because stuff just will not blend together and it'll look bad. You're going to have to pick a background image, and again, we're going to look for some free stuff out there. We're going to look for background music, and then we're going to come up with a plan. You have to have a plan, and this is where people fail. They jump in, they grab a game engine, they start looking at tutorials, and they start trying to make something, and then they hit some kind of obstacle. Either a piece of code they can't come up with, or there's an asset they can't find, and then everything stops, and they don't know what to do, and then it gets too hard, and then they kind of walk away, and they really never come back. But if you have a plan, you can identify that stuff beforehand, and you can work those bugs out again beforehand, and that way you can kind of progress and you can actually complete your project. And we're also going to create a goal. Anytime you go from point A to point B, you always need to know where point A is and where point B is. So point B is going to be our goal, our destination. What's our goal? What are we trying to accomplish? Alright, first thing we're going to come up with is our color scheme. So we need a color palette to use for menus and other areas throughout our game. Now Canva has a very nice one, and so does this site Coolers. I've been using this quite a bit. Because again, you don't want an ugly menu. You want professionalism. Alright, so here is the Coolers site, or Colors, however you want to say this word. But then you go here, and again, it's HTTPS, make sure that that's in there, and then hit start the generator, and wait. All right, and it will produce a color palette. Now, if you're not 100% happy with it, like let's say, oh, I really like these two colors, you can lock them in, so I'm gonna hit the little lock. And then if you hit your space bar, you'll get more options. And I don't like that, don't like that. I'm gonna pop this one in because that could be a nice color for text. And keep going. Not a big fan of pink or reds, and that's just me. Maybe that's what I'm stuck with. Ooh, maybe I can grab that brown. And a green. Let's do that. So make sure that you do this, because this is only going to give you colors that match, or are on the same palette. And what you want to do is you want to write down these 6-digit hexadecimal numbers. Now, what these numbers represent is a variation in the red, blues, and greens to make up these actual colors. But in the game engines, you can actually just type these in, and you can get these exact colors. So make sure you write these numbers down all the way across. And it's always a good idea to put a little note like, this is the green, this is the brown, this is the darker blue, this is the lighter blue, and this is the really light green, or whatever you want to call it. And that way, when you're in the game engine, you know which one's the darker, which one's the lighter, because we tend to, when we do text, we tend to have a darker background with a lighter color for the text itself. All right, now that you've got your color scheme picked out, we need to come up with a background image, and that's going to be for the very first window that the customer sees. They're going to see some kind of main menu. Now, the last thing you want to do here is copy an image from Google that you do not own the rights to. That will get you in so much trouble. Let me give you an example. Years ago, way back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, I used to work for a medical foundation, multi-practice site, 50 doctors, about 200 staff, and we had a web designer that had been making websites for like a bajillion years. And this guy was older, he had been around for long, and he had tons of images and stuff and blah, blah, blah. Well, he had purchased a bunch of these images, and there used to, a long time ago, if you went to like Office Max or Staples, they'd always have these bins by the registers, and they were like the bargain CDs. Like for $2, you get a CD with 2,000 images, and they were just stupid little images of different things. And he had a ton of those. Well, when I broke off with a partner to make my website, we had him create our website, and he used an image of just a handshake. It's just two hands shaking. That was all that was in the image. And he'd got it from a CD that he had purchased, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. Well, what happens is Getty Images, Adobe, Shutterstock, whoever it is, buys the copyright to that image or the rights to that image. So I'm a guy, I create this image of this handshake, I put it online, nobody ever buys it, I make a little bit of money. And after 15 years, I get bored. So then I sell that image or the rights to that image to Getty. Getty then scours the internet looking for anybody using that, and they send them cease and desist letters. Like we got a letter that we owed Getty Images $1,000, and they said they don't care if we remove it because we've already got use out of it. And they actually have like the legal right to do that. So we went to our web guy, and he was able to produce the CD that he had purchased it from and show them, and that saved him from having to pay the $1,000. But if you look online and look for Getty Images coming after people, like they come after churches, all kinds of places, and they buy these images after they've already been distributed, and then if you don't have proof, you got to pay them the money legally. So if you're ever going to make anything commercial and you plan to sell it, even if it's $1 or $50, whatever it is, make sure you have the legal right to do that. And one place where you can go, it's like kind of like the big mother lode, is opengameart.org. Tons of stuff. Love this site. If your game makes money and you use some stuff from here, make sure you send these guys some kind of donation to keep this going, because this site is amazing. So you're going to go browse. And let's go for concept art. Almost everything on here is what they call like a CC3. Oop, I messed that up. Like a CC3 license, and then you can click on the license to actually find what it is. All right, so we're looking for a background image for our game. Like maybe if we're going to make a space game, we can have this solar system as our image. And you can click on the license. You can see here, this is a CC3. And if I click on it, it'll show you like what rights you have. So you're free to share, you're free to adapt. They want you to give credit. So anything that you find here, in this case, you're going to make sure that you're going to credit the author. You want to look for something like this, especially. You are free to copy, redistribute in any medium or format for any purpose. You want to see this word commercially. If you don't see this word commercially, you don't have the rights to use it commercially. Now, for me, if I was going to make something commercial, and I was going to use this as a background image for a menu page, I would obviously download the asset. I would take a screenshot of this so I knew where I got it from. So I'd go to my PC, I'd make a new folder, maybe on the desktop. And I would call it game assets, or I would call it whatever. So I would have like a main game assets page, and then inside there I would have other folders for each individual thing. So let's say this is going to be the main menu. So for every asset that I downloaded from OpenGameArt, I would include a screenshot of the store page. So I knew exactly like who I was going to, attribute that to, and who I was going to mention in the credits and what the name of it was, and I can prove where I got it from. Then I would have obviously the asset that I'm looking for that I downloaded, and I would have a copy of the license that they showed. So here, this shows this little license, SC3, and I would show, hey, this is where I got this information from. Because again, if you ever have to go to court, it's not about what's right or wrong, it's about what you can prove. All right, and then going back here, again, they got a ton of images. I mean, there's over 10 pages of different images. This is a fractal alien landscape. Some of these pictures are just amazing. Like this one's a really good one. And that's a pretty cool background image. Another neat site, if a photograph would work for you, is this Pexels, and they have a very neat license. Like if I hit license, you can see pretty much everything is free. You don't have to give them credit for that, although it is nice to credit those people. And the only thing that's not allowed is you can't obviously resell it under somebody else's thing or alter the copies or whatever. Blah blah blah. So this is one of the few places where I've been able to actually find this stuff. So let's say I'm looking for space. Or spaceship. Or space wallpaper. Let's do space background. They have tons of these. Again, they're great for main menus. And you can always animate something in the background, like have a ship going across or whatever you want to do. But again, I would do the same thing. If I'm going to download that, pick my size, I'm going to make sure I write down the name, and I'm going to make sure I copy that license from the top. So you need some kind of image. And then when you do that, make sure you copy all the other stuff, the license and the artist, and make sure that you're attributing your stuff like in a credit scene, and you write down these people and give them credit for their work. And the last thing people want to do is work for free. I mean, let's say you spend, 20 weeks working on your game and people start stealing it. Are you going to be happy with that? Are you going to like, hey, that's great? All right, then you want to move on to the background music. We need some kind of music in the background to kind of set the mood. So what's going to happen is they're going to open up your game and press play and hit the icon, whatever, and it's going to bring them to this main menu. And this main menu is going to set the mood. It's going to have a background image. It's going to kind of tell us what kind of game we're going to play, and it's going to have some kind of music in that's going to set the mood. Is this going to be a horror game, a happy game? You get the idea. And again, OpenGameArt has a ton of music. So if I hit browse and look for music, and remember, music and sound effects are different. So music. And you can even type in like what you're looking for, like sci-fi or spaceship or that kind of stuff. But here's menu music. But again, same thing. Make sure you take a picture of where you got it from. So like if I was going to do this menu music, gotta click on it. Come on. I would take a screenshot of this. I would make sure I saved the file, and I would make sure that I had a copy of the license. All of that. Now another site I found was this Zapsplat, and they have like free sound effects. But again, it's the same thing. Obviously, they do have a pricing model. They have the free licenses, and some of the free stuff is kind of, you know, kind of like there's not a whole lot, but it depends on what you're looking for. So again, the same thing. I would always, you know, again take lots of pictures of whatever you're doing. Let's look for impact sound, body impacts. That's kind of cool. So when you hit somebody, sci-fi sounds, lasers and weapons. They have 700 that are different, that are free. Alarms, I don't really see anything for, oh, there we go. Atmospheres, you know, that might be a good background music. That's kind of windy. This one here is kind of neat, this hum. Again, just make sure that you're always reading the license requirements. Like in here, you have to, you know, attribute the actual creators. Like it's a requirement for this license. Okay, so we have our background image, we have our color scheme all picked out, we've got some background music that we're going to use. Now we need to move on to the plan. Now, you can make a high concept document, or you can actually complete an entire game design document, your choice. But if you go to YouTube and look for extra credits, they have both a high concept kind of walkthrough, like what it would include and things like that, and they have a design document. And both their videos are actually pretty good. But this is where your efforts are going to pay off. This is where you're going to write out, hey, here's how the game is going to work. Here's what a normal turn looks like. Here's like a list of all the assets that I can think about that I need now. And that asset can be anything. I need an enemy, and that enemy is going to shoot. So now I need some kind of projectile for that enemy. And then when he shoots, he's going to need some kind of sound for the projectile. How much damage is he going to do? And so there's tons of stuff that you need to map out and figure out. What are the levels going to look like? Is it going to be like an arena thing where I go into one arena, then I kill all the monsters, and then I go to the next arena and kill all the monsters? Is it going to be a deserted city? Is it going to be just an open area? You know, what's it going to be? Is the player going to have multiple weapons available to him, or is he going to have the same weapon through the whole game? So all this stuff needs to be answered before you even start getting into a game engine. And then as you're mapping this stuff out, make sure that you make note of things that you think you're going to struggle with, or where you think your obstacles or hurdles are going to be. So I'm not going to get into a whole bunch of that stuff now, but it's up to you to go to YouTube and look for game design documents and start researching that, or a high concept document. Either of those will work. If you're not going to take the time to make a plan, again, you're planning to fail, and it's probably not going to work out for you. All right, moving on. You also want to create a YouTube account if you do not already have one. The biggest, as far as marketing goes for free, for you yourself making YouTube videos about your process of making the game and keeping touch with your community and building up a community on YouTube. That and Reddit are really your biggest free things. You don't want to go to Facebook and put ads on there or start paying for YouTube ads. None of that stuff really works. Ask yourself, when's the last time you actually bought something from a YouTube ad? I'm still amazed that these companies pay so much money for these things to be done. All right, on Reddit has a ton of game developer forums. There's game dev, there's indie game dev, there's just games. Tons of forums where you can, again, if you're ever, you got 20 minutes between classes or something, stop and start checking that out and read more. The more you know, remember, if you're trying to get into this as a career, the more you know, the farther you're going to go. All right, and last but not least, you need to go to howtomarketagame.com. This Chris Zukowski guy, he is like the god of game marketing. He has got some major videos that are very interesting about how Steam works. He's really big into Steam and understanding their algorithm and how games get placed where they get placed. All right, and then lastly, you need a goal. You know, where are we trying to get to? You want to keep your goal small. In our game, our goal is going to be to make $1. Because remember, if you make $1, you're a professional, you know, whatever it is. And that's the difference between an amateur and a professional. A professional gets paid. So as long as you sell one copy of your game for $1, you are a professional. All right, we're also going to create a minimal viable product. So there's going to be other things you're going to think about as you're going through this project. You're going to be thinking, oh, I can add this, I can add this. Make sure you break notes about that stuff because all that stuff can be added in an update. So the idea is to place your game on itch.io. And then over the course of let's say the next year, as it's there on itch, you're going to keep improving your game, adding more to it. As it gets bigger and bigger, you're going to start adding it to more sites. Good Old Gamers, there's a couple other sites, and then eventually when you think you're ready and you've got a solid 2+ hours of gameplay in your game, you're going to launch it on Steam. And hopefully by then you've got enough of a following, enough wish lists and stuff like that where you can actually make, you know, several $1,000s from your game. All right, so that's our goal. And then last, I'd like to thank Ketra Games. She's the one that gave me, I was watching her channel, and she's the one that kind of gave me the idea for the top-down game. I teach at a community college. I'm pretty comfortable with my income, so I don't really make games for sale. But I'm always screwing around with different things. A YouTube channel that I watch a lot is Lost Relic Games. I find his content very interesting. Obviously, OpenGameArt.org is just an amazing site. And if I ever do sell a game, I'm going to make sure I donate a ton to them. Brackies, I was so sad when they quit doing their game design series because his stuff was just amazing back in the day. And that's probably what really got me into playing with Unity and messing around with game stuff. And then Bendux is a newer YouTuber, and his stuff is actually really good too. He covers a lot of some of the newer stuff like the new input system and things like that. So check him out. All right, so you got your homework. You're kind of seeing now like all the stuff and all the different hats you have to wear to get into indie game design. Let's see how you do.